Good afternoon. My name is Rabbi Shaul Shimon Deutsch. I am the director of the Living Torah Museum. The Living Torah Museum is a museum that is based in New York City. It has two locations, one in Borough Park and one in the Catskills. Our goal and our mission is to show and to teach Torah in a unique way, in a way that you can see and understand the actual items you are learning about. The museum has two sections. One is on archaeology, and the other one is on animals that are taxidermy. Animals that are no longer alive, but they were once real, and that they're all been preserved. To teach you about the animals of the Torah, to teach you about the animals of the Mishnah, to teach you about the creeping animals of the Torah, as well as all the birds of the Torah, which we just learned in Parshas Re'eh a few weeks ago. Our goal is to make Torah easier to learn and to understand. I was one of the annoying kids who used to ask too many questions in class. I drove my Rabbis crazy with questions. Everything I wanted to know, what it looked like and how it worked. And if you're going to a classic yeshiva, they're not trained, the teachers are not trained to handle these kind of questions. We were learning about ancient Egypt, and my Rabbi who told us that the Jews had to leave Egypt because it was the god of Egypt, an avodah zarah of Mitzrayim, that they would have to sacrifice. And of course, I went home and started reading everything on Egypt possible. And I found nothing, zero, that sheep and goats were ever worshipped by the Egyptians. I came back to school. Rabbi, the Egyptians never worshipped goats and they never worshipped sheep. They worshipped the Apis bull, but they didn't worship sheep or goats. So why are you teaching me that the Jews had to leave Egypt because of that? And my Rebbe's response was, when you get older, you're going to find out. In Yiddish, we say, wenn du wirst werden älter, wirst du verstehen. Well, I didn't take no for an answer. So I decided to do my own research. And my question got even stronger. In Saqqara, Egypt, they discovered this wall, and I just published it in my book on Sefer Devarim. And these are tribute being brought to an Egyptian pharaoh. And look at what you have right at the center. A little lamb is being brought as tribute to the Pharaoh of Egypt. So how can you say that we cannot sacrifice a Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim, a Paschal offering in Egypt, because it's the god of Egypt? Well, why are the Egyptians holding a god and bringing it as tribute? And if you read my new book on Devarim, I answer the questions, because the teachers are teaching it wrong. Onkelos says that Toyavas Mitzrayim does not mean the way people are translating it. He says that Toyavas Mitzrayim means, I'll read through what I just wrote. Thus, Onkelos doesn't say that it refers to the idolatry of Egypt, but rather the cattle which they took pride in. Toyavas doesn't mean the way most people are translating it. And Onkelos, who is the #1 translator of the Torah, is telling us that cattle was taken pride by the Egyptians. Now, I want to ask you something. If you took something that the Egyptians took pride in, that they brought it as tribute to their gods, their avodah zarah, and you would take that and start playing with it, sacrificing it, guess what would happen to you? They would kill you. The Mishnah teaches us an interesting thing of what happened when the Roman Empire fell. When the Roman Empire fell, most of Rome was ruled by the Sasanian Empire. And in the Talmud, we have names of the Sasanian kings. Shvor Malka, Shapur II. Isgader Malka, Yasgard. And you can Google all of these people, and they're all famous Sasanian kings. Peruz, who was a very, very evil person, mentioned in the Talmud as well. They were all Sasanian kings. And in my museum, I have coins of every single one of these kings. Do you know that they were fire worshippers? They used to worship fire. Do you know that the day of their holiday, you were not allowed to light a single fire other than in their temples? So the Mishnah has a question. Does one need to light candles on Erev Shabbos, on a day that is their holiday, and put your life in danger in order to light Shabbos candles? And the Mishnah says no. So when you take the one thing that they took pride in, Toyavas Mitzrayim, the Onkelos said, does not mean the idols of Egypt. It means what they took pride in. And all the yeshivas are mistranslated because they don't read Onkelos. That's why my books became so popular. Because I go back and show you every single one of the things that you are learning to understand it, how the original commentaries of Rashi, the Ramban, the Even Ezra, were really teaching it to you. And sometimes it differs from the way popular opinions are. So let's say you're just starting out on learning, and you're saying, you know what, Rosh Hashanah is coming. I want to learn this coming year the Torah in a way that I'm really going to understand what I'm learning. I don't care if you buy my books or not. They cost $35. You can get Sefer Bereshis and learn Parsha by Parsha and really understand. I show you the geography. I show you what these places look like today. Vayetze Yaakov meBe'er Shava vayelech Harana. Where is Haran today? I take you to Haran, Syria. I show you what Haran looks like. You get a feel of the locations, the places, the artifacts mentioned in Chumash. And archaeology has an opportunity to speak to us and resolve questions that we have that otherwise we cannot understand. We're just holding right before Parshas Hazinu in a few weeks. And Hashem says, Hazinu hashamayim va'adabera, v'sishma ha'aretz imrefi. The heavens and the earth are going to say witnesses to the events of the past. Now, how does the ground speak to us? It's archaeology. And it shows us things that are discovered that literally puts another understanding of what we're learning about. Right here, you guys are in Yerushalayim. In Jerusalem here, if you go to Ir David, they found these two pieces of clay just a couple of years ago. And I'm going to read you just a little bit about this. In 2008, Dr. Eliat Mazur and her team enlarged the dig, and just a few feet away from where they were digging, they found two original bulla, pieces of clay. Whenever a king used to stamp a decree, he had a ring seal, and he would take his decree, write it usually on papyrus, and they would roll it up, put a string around it, take a wet piece of clay, and stamp it. And that clay impression would be attached to the string outside the document. And they discover 2 pieces of clay that says on it an ancient Hebrew script, Yehuchal, son of Shalmayahu, and Gedaliah, son of Pashura. Who are these 2 people? In the final days before Jerusalem was destroyed in the first temple, and Yirmiyah HaNavi, Jeremiah, is walking through the streets of Jerusalem, telling people, destruction is coming. And you know what they used to do to people who gave bad news? The bearer of bad news needs to be killed. So these 2 ministers go to the king of Judea, Tzidkiyahu, Zedekiah, king of Judea, and they suggest that he kill Yirmiyah HaNavi. He killed Jeremiah. And their names on these 2 pieces of clay are exactly as recorded in the story of Yirmiyah. If you were to open a Yirmiyah, chapter 37, verse 3, 38, verse 1, 41, verses 1 through 6, you can read all about it. So here in Yerushalayim in 2008, these 2 pieces of clay from ministers who had signed documents, who are the same people who wanted to kill Yirmiyah HaNavi, were discovered. So the next time someone says to you, well, who wrote up all of these books and how do I know that they're all real? Here in Yerushalayim, exactly where they should be, at the base of the palace of Ir David, is where they found these 2 pieces of clay. And I wrote a complete report about it in my book on Melachim Aleph, Kings 1. So I'm sitting in class, driving my teachers crazy with questions. And that's why I made the Living Torah Museum. Because I decided as a 12-year-old boy that the Jewish nation needs a museum that's going to help you see, understand what you're really learning about. Well, we're learning about Yosef in Chumash Bereshis being thrown into prison. And in the prison, he's joined up with the Sar HaMashkin and the Sar HaOifim, the minister of Paro's drink and his baker. And they're both imprisoned. And I raised my hand in class. I said, Rabbi, I have a question for you. Yeah. What happened to the Sar HaMashkin? He was reinstated to his position. The Sar HaOifim, they killed him. Why was one killed and one was allowed to live? And my Rebbe said, because the baker obviously could have had much time to make sure that there were no rocks in Paro's food, where the person serving him wine, he would have been a person who didn't have that opportunity. Why not? If your whole job to be the cupbearer of a pharaoh is to take the drink and go over to the pharaoh and serve him, why didn't you see a fly going into his drinking vessel? Anybody have an answer for that? No? Let me tell you the answer. When I studied the ancient Egyptian customs, I found out that it was illegal to look at the face of a pharaoh. It's the same now in many African kingdoms. When you served a ruler, you had to look down and raise up and give them to drink. So I cannot be held responsible if a fly went into his drink because I couldn't look and I couldn't check. Because out of respect for the ruler, I had to look down. Rabbi, I have another question for you. What happened when Joseph interpreted the dreams of the Sar HaMashkin and the Sar HaOifim? It says in the pasuk, it says in the passage in the Torah, Vayaroisam Yosef saw them v'hinam zayafim, and they were atzuvim, they were depressed. Rabbi, why are they depressed? What do you mean? They're depressed, Rashi says, because Ishke, Pisra, and Chaloim, Chalomnu. Each one dreamed what would happen to the other one. So the Sar HaMashkin sees his good friend, the Sar HaOifim, is going to be killed. He's obviously depressed. Rabbi, what about the Sar HaOifim? Sar HaOifim sees himself standing in front of Pharaoh, and he sees his friend reinstated to his position, so why is he depressed? When you get older, you're going to find out. And my Rebbe was right. There was a discovery in Egypt and answers this question. This is a papyrus scroll called the Book of Dreams. The red ink are all bad dreams for the Egyptians. The black ink were all the good dreams for the Egyptians. What does it say in the Book of Dreams of the Egyptians? If you see Pharaoh in your dream, death is close at hand. If you dream about Pharaoh, you're going to die very soon. Yosef sees them. They're both depressed. Because in their mind, according to the Egyptian interpretation of dreams, they're both going to die. And what does Yosef say to them? Madua pneichem roim hayom. Why do you look so bad? And then Yosef says the most amazing things. La Hashem, according to God, I'm going to interpret your dreams. Sar HaMashkin, you live. Sar HaOifim, you die. If you don't delve into Egyptian archaeology, you will never understand what's doing in the mindset of an Egyptian. And you cannot understand what the pasuk in Chumash is teaching you if you don't fully understand what's happening in the mindset of an Egyptian. And that's why I spent so many years of my life studying all these ancient cultures to better understand Chumash, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Mishnah, and Gemara. Reb Chaim Kanievsky told me that I should write one book on everything. I was pretty close with him. For over 20 years, I had times I would go in and speak to him, and he would ask me his own questions on various subjects. And he absolutely loved understanding every tidbit of information that you can learn and garner from a lot of these things. We say in America, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is when my beard was completely red. This is me and Reb Chaim Kanievsky. And if you look at Reb Chaim Kanievsky's face, you can see the simcha, the pure joy that he felt when he would discuss all of these different things. I was very close also with his father-in-law. This is Rabbi Elyashiv. Rabbi Elyashiv was considered the greatest man in Jewish law of his generation. And that's me and Rabbi Elyashiv in Rabbi Elyashiv's kitchen of his house, when he would ask me his own personal questions on things that have to do with understanding the reala, the artifacts, to be able to understand what you're learning about. So I'm going to share with you a very personal story. So I'm sitting by Reb Chaim Kanievsky one day, and he says to me, I want you to write a book on every subject, because this information has to be put out there. And I said, I almost jokingly, I said, well, if you want me to write a book on everything, I need arichas yamim, I need a long life. And Reb Chaim looks at me and he gave me a bracha for arichas yamim. I should have a long life. I was very happy. I was here a couple of, about 8 weeks ago, probably. On July 31st, I was in a major car accident. car accident that Hatzalah said 95% of people don't survive, and I walked out of it unharmed. I mean, I'm banged up, but I'm, Baruch Hashem, didn't break a single limb or anything. And as the car is hitting me, because it was a car that lost control, who went from the opposite direction in a straight-on, head-on collision. Do you know the actual thought as I saw the car about to hit me? Should I say Shema Yisrael? No, I don't have to say Shema Yisrael now, because Reb Chaim Kanievsky gave me a blessing that I'm going to have a long life, so I don't have to say Shema Yisrael now. This was what was going through in the split seconds as the car is coming on in a head-on collision. I don't believe that I'm alive today for any other purpose, which is to help you learn Torah and understand things in a way that's probably a little different than the way you're going to learn it most times, because I'm showing you the perspective from the Egyptians, the perspective from the things that were happening in that specific time. And I want to show you something that's truly fascinating. So, what kind of drinking bowl did the Sar HaMashkin give Paro to drink? So, if you read Art Scroll and you read most translations, they're going to tell you that Pharaoh would have drinking out of a cup. And they're interpreting the word kais to be cup. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says, Nimsa Zvuv, they found the fly, befeli poitrin. As a kid in yeshiva, I said, what's a feli poitrin? So my Rabbi told me it was some kind of kiddush cup. I said, really? So why didn't Rashi just say, Nimsa Zvuv b'kois parei? Why is Rashi going out of his way to tell you that it was found in a thing? So if you Google the word fiali, P-H-I-A-L-E, fiali, and go to Google Images, you will see a drinking bowl that looks like the one I'm holding. And that's the Novominsker Rebbe, the head of Agudas Yisrael, the head of Moetzes Gedola HaTorah in the United States, holding one of those drinking bowls and trying to learn how to drink from them. Rashi is using the word in Greek, fiali, phali. The word in Roman Latin is called patera. You can Google it, P-A-T-E-R-A. Go to Google Images. Every major museum in the world, from the Metropolitan to the Israel Museum, to the Louvre in Paris, to the British Museum, will show you that they have these drinking bowls on display. You would take your two fingers and put it underneath. You hold it in the palm of your hand, and they would use it to drink. Now, why would you use a drinking bowl, not a regular cup? I don't know about you, but if you ever sit by the Seder and you try to lean over and drink 4 cups of wine, the wine usually hits you in the nose. With a drinking bowl, it's much easier to control. This is a wall in the British Museum. That is Sancherib, king of Ashur, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, holding one of those drinking bowls. So I'm showing you simple words in Rashi in Chumash Bereshis, that if you know the archaeology, you understand what Rashi is talking about. And if you don't, you're just reading through words without understanding their true meaning. One of the questions that I'm often asked is a mysterious medrash. It says, if you asked any college professor, are unicorns real? No, they're mythical animals. But it says about Adam Arishon, that Adam, that he brought as a carbon a unicorn, an animal with 1 horn. And for years, I was asked the same question. How could the Medrash say that Adam Arishon brought a animal with one horn sticking out of his head when it's a unicorn is a mythical animal? In my book on Bamidbar, in the beginning of the book, I actually address this specific question, because there is a few opinions on what the coverings of the Mishkan called Tachash meant. So one opinion is that it was an animal that was only temporarily created and no longer exists. That's the opinion of the Talmud Bavli, and that's the opinion that Rashi writes in Chumash. And here I list that there's a huge machlokes, there's a huge disagreement amongst the different rabbinical sources. The Talmud Yerushalmi says, no, it's a creature, has many opinions in the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud Yerushalmi cites many opinions that mention the Tachash. Rabbi Yehuda says the Tachash was a skin of blue processed leather. Rabbi Sadigon states that it was black leather. Some commentaries say it was waterproof leather. This is all mentioned. I give you the sources for all of them. But the word Tachash is also found in Egyptian hieroglyphics. And in hieroglyphics, it means special processed leather. And I give you the sources in Egyptian hieroglyphics if you want to look it up. There's an opinion that it was made from the skin of a weasel. And there are many different opinions. Now, what's very, very fascinating is the unicorn. They just found 3 years ago something called the Siberian unicorn. This is the first rendering that was released by the scientists. So what everyone said was a mythical creature, they found the full skeleton of a Siberian unicorn, and you can go online and read all about it. You can read it here. I give you the sources. Siberian unicorn was discovered in a full skeleton. So what everyone said was a mythical opinion of a mythical animal was just discovered a full skeleton of the Siberian unicorn. Now they're arguing about the date of when it exactly existed, but I don't care what their dating system is. That's a whole different discussion. But a full skeleton of a Siberian unicorn has been discovered. And guess what? It has split hoofs. It's a kosher animal. I get asked many questions about Emunah and Bitachon. And I'm going to give you some of the most difficult ones I've been asked. There was a Hasidic boy. He was learning in Yeshiva in New York. He was a top student. And one day he leaves Judaism completely. His father comes to me brokenhearted and said, I don't know what happened to my son. He was a top boy. He was a top student. And one day, he left Judaism completely, and he's not telling anybody why. Rabbi Deutsch, could you possibly talk to this boy? So, he had moved to Manhattan, not a very really nice place in Manhattan. He was living in Greenwich Village, and I went to see this boy. And I went to his apartment, and I rang the bell, and I said to him, could you tell me what happened to you? Why did you leave Judaism? He says, I left Judaism because of the Tana Devei Eliyahu. There's a sefer called the Tana Devei Eliyahu, and the Tana Devei Eliyahu in his introduction writes that you know what happens every day at the Ma'aras HaMachpelah? Eliezer, the servant of Avram, wakes up Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He washes them Negelwasser, and they daven Shachris, Mincha, Maariv, and then they go back to sleep. Rabbi, how could a body survive from the time of Avram Avinu, complete, that he says he wakes them up, Neshamas begufim, they get up and pray 3 times a day? It's an impossible thing scientifically. I said, well, if the Tana Devei Eliyahu writes it, I'm sure it's true. Rabbi, you prove to me that this is true, I'm going back to yeshiva. I said, give me a couple of days. I didn't know what to answer this person. How am I going to prove to him that a human body can survive naturally over such a long period of time? You know, there are stories of tzaddikim whose bodies survive, but how am I going to prove it to him? I drive back to Borough Park, and those of you who know New York a little bit, there's a big synagogue on 13th Avenue called Shomer Shabbos, and it's a minyan factory. There's minyanim there constantly, maybe like the Shtiblach here in Yerushalayim. So I'm looking for a minyan, so I go to Shomer Shabbos, and I start davening Ma'ariv. And I said, Hashem, how am I going to answer this person's very difficult question? Well, Ma'ariv that night took me over an hour. I cried my eyes out to Hashem. Please, give me the ability of answering this person's question. I finished davening Ma'ariv and I walk outside on 13th Avenue and I meet an extended family member, meaning his relative married one of my relatives, so we call it extended family. And this man is a member of the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society in New York. And he says to me, Rabbi Deutsch, I have to tell you an amazing story that just happened. There's a cemetery in Woodridge, New Jersey, that had a problem, that the water table was very, very low, and it started flooding an area of the cemetery with 20 graves. They went to a big rabbi in New York named Rabbi David Cohen, the Gvul Yavitz, and they said, what should we do about these graves? You know, it's flooding these graves, so they have to be moved. And Rabbi David Cohen told them they should move these graves to the Lakewood Cemetery, and he told them exactly according to Jewish law how these graves have to be moved. And this man says to me, Rabbi Deutsch, we opened the first grave, we found a couple of bones. The next grave, a couple of bones. We come to one grave. Everything is complete. The man died in 1995. And this man, who's a member of the Chevra Kadisha, says to me, I myself had a tremendous awakening to do tshuva when I saw such a thing. He says, but I don't know who this person there was. Rabbi Deutsch, could you find out who this guy was? I said, give me pictures. Now, we didn't take pictures of the body itself, but he had taken pictures of the tombstone, and he took pictures as they opened the grave that from 1995 till now. This was a few years ago, but you're talking about 30 years. The casket is complete. Well, I called up somebody who would have known this person. I said, do you know this person? He says, yes, he was by my wedding. I knew him. And his name was Yossi Cohen. He wasn't a rabbi. He was a computer programmer. But he was very careful in doing Torah and mitzvahs. He was a Balkora in Chaim, Berlin for many years. This is a picture of what he looked like. He passed away from cancer in 1995. This is a picture of his tombstone. This is a picture when they opened the grave, and if you look closely at the picture, you can see the casket is complete. Now, wooden caskets, after 30 years, rot, and they're completely gone. The man who picked him out of the ground told me he looked like they did the tahara on him 5 minutes ago. There wasn't even a discoloration of skin. He was reburied in the Lakewood Cemetery. Somebody said to me after, well, maybe because his body was in water, it survived. Just the opposite. The Gemara in Yevamah says that if a body is in water for 3 days, it loses any recognition of the details of the face, and it completely disintegrates this way. So just the opposite. There was a triple miracle here. A man is in the ground for 30 years. His body is found complete, no discoloration, as testified by members of the Chevra Kadisha. This is a picture of his tombstone. This is a picture as they opened the grave, and it is complete. And I showed this boy all of this, and he went back to yeshiva. A man is laying in the ground for 30 years, brought a boy back to Yiddishkeit. Nothing in this world happens by accident. Maimonides teaches us, the Rambam teaches us, that everything that happens is hashgacha pratis, is with divine providence. The Baal Shem Tov once showed his students a leaf that was falling off a tree. And I told the story last time I was here. And it fell onto the ground. And he told the students, pick up that leaf. And they saw a worm that was baking in the sun who needed some shade. And the leaf fell in a way to give it shade. We all go through difficulties in life. But Hashem makes those difficulties for us for a reason. Whether we understand it or not, whether we see the reasons or not, Hashem has his reasons. Ki loi machshavoisei machshavoiseichem. And people always ask me this question, Rabbi Deutsch, good people, only good things should happen to them. Bad people, bad things should happen to them. So why do bad things happen to good people? I said, because there will be no free will. If only good things happen to good people, and only bad things happen to bad people, who would want to be bad? So because we're in Golus, things have to look like it's confusing. But in reality, Hashem makes things to happen in unique ways. And I want to share with you a few stories about just this point. There's a man, his name is Elton Kahn. Elton Kahn's American Jew, whose 3 generations in America knows nothing about Judaism. There's a picture of him. That's me and him right there. Elton Kahn comes out of the Police Academy of New York City. And he's assigned to Borough Park. And the first day he walks out on the street of the 66th precinct in Borough Park, and he sees people dressed like Orthodox Hasidic Jews. And he walks over to a person and says, why are you dressed like Fiddler on the Roof? The guy didn't know who Fiddler on the Roof was or what it was. So he says, go to Rabbi Deutsch, he'll answer you those questions. On a Thursday evening, this police officer knocks on the door of my synagogue. Rabbi, can I talk to you? I just went off duty. Why are people in this neighborhood dressed like this? And I sat and spoke to him that night till about 5 o'clock in the morning. And he decided that he wants to learn Aleph Beis. And over the next few months, he became an Orthodox Jewish person, working for the police department. Gradually, Elton became a full Shomer Shabbos. One day in May of 2001, Elton came to see me looking extremely upset. By then, the police department had transferred him from the 66th precinct in Borough Park to the 72nd precinct on 3rd Avenue and 29th Street in Brooklyn. I asked Elton what was wrong, and he said to me that his direct supervisor of his precinct, Sergeant Joseph Gray, was giving him a hard time about keeping Shabbos. He required Elton to work a double shift on Thursday and allowed him to leave an hour before Shabbos. By the time he got home, he just had a few minutes left to prepare for Shabbos and to light candles. Rabbi, Elton said, I'm trying so hard to do the right thing, to keep Shabbos. Why am I facing so many obstacles? I pulled out a journal that was published before World War II called Der Shabbos in Yiddish. And it was made for people to encourage them to keep Shabbos, and the Chafetz Chaim writes the following, that a person who wants to keep Shabbos, all their obstacles will disappear. I said, Elton, hang on. Your obstacles are going to disappear. I'm not a prophet. I was just saying what the Chafetz Chaim says. A couple of months later, on August 3rd, 2001, Elton was home keeping Shabbos while Sergeant Gray and his fellow officers at the precinct were celebrating a birthday. On duty, they went out to a bar, and some of them got drunk, and even though they were supposed to be on duty afterwards, Gray, who was intoxicated, drove off in his car and ran over 4 pedestrians. He killed a pregnant woman with her child, and 2 others with seriously life-threatening things. Due to public pressure, Mayor Rudy Giuliani was forced to reassign all the police officers from that precinct. Only Elton wasn't disciplined because he was keeping Shabbos. Today, Elton is one of the highest-ranking members of the New York City Police Department. He is 4th in line to the commissioner of New York City Police Department. A man who was supervisor was giving him problems to keep Shabbos. He was the only one who was not there. He trained all the new officers assigned to that precinct to know the local situations of that precinct. And that's what keeping Shabbos. So when he was suffering, it seemed to him the worst torture in the world. But his career path went up in an amazing direction. My youngest daughter got married. He showed up to the wedding in full New York City police officer attire. That's me and him at my youngest daughter's wedding a few years ago. Another man comes to see me. His name is Leonardo Ulloa, person from, of all places, Honduras. And he saw in Honduras this weird custom. His grandmother would go to a closet every week and light a candle in a closet. And he would ask his family, what's this lighting candles in a closet all about? He comes to New York City, lives in all places, around the block from my synagogue. And he comes to see me. Well, he found out that he comes from Marranos. He knew these weird customs that 6 families were only allowed to marry each other in his town. They had their own cemetery. And he had to go through the process of conversion because we weren't sure about all the generations whether or not they were Jewish. Myself, Rabbi Yisrael Belsky, the Rosh Yeshivat of Torah Vadas, and another rabbi were Megayer, his entire family. Leonardo today calls himself Yehuda Aryeh. This is a picture of him. That's him standing in my synagogue in Borough Park. He is a Baal Korah, a very learned person. And how did he find his way back from a Marano family? From one candle in a closet. This is life. Whether we understand it or not, we understand our struggles or not. But I want you to imagine that you are an Olympic athlete and you're about to go into the Olympics. You are rated #1 bicyclist in the world. That man in 1969 was known as Sam Zeitlin. Sam Zeitlin was literally predicted to win the 1972 Olympics as the best cyclist in the world. Sam Zeitlin wanted to ride for America, but when members of his team started showing anti-Semitism, he decided, I'm going to move to Israel, and I'm going to present Israel in the Israel national team of cycling for the Olympics. This is a picture of Sam Zeitlin right there. This is all in my new book on Devarim. This is the Israeli national team. But the Israeli national team said that you have to do the qualifying round on Shabbos. And he said, but I became Sabbath observant. You have a choice. Do you want to be Sabbath observant or do you want to win gold at the Olympics? This was his lifelong dream. And Sam Zeitlin decided to skip the 1972 Olympics. And he was the only person who was not murdered in Munich when the Israeli team was murdered. I own a very big cemetery area of plots in New York. Sam Zeitlin died a few years ago, is buried in my cemetery plots. This is Sam Zeitlin training for the Olympics. That's the Israel national team that were killed out in the 72 Munich massacre. He's the only one who survived. And Sam Zeitlin used to say, when I thought I'm giving up my dream of winning the gold in the Olympics, I thought it was the greatest sacrifice I did. But you know what Hashem showed me? Hashem saved my life. So I don't care if your name is Elton Kahn, who walks out of a police station and comes back to Judaism that way. Or it's Sam Zeitlin who skips his gold medal opportunity and becomes Shomer Shabbos. Or if it's Leonardo Ulloa who's inspired by a candle in a closet. Hashem puts us all in unique situations for unique reasons. And I want to tell you and share with you a personal thought. After my car accident, Hatzalah put me in an ambulance. And you know where I was on the way to go? I was on the way to go give a shiur for Irgun Shiuri HaTorah that was going to be broadcast on Torah anytime around the world. And from the ambulance, I tell the Hatzalah member, could you please call up the person in charge of the shiur I'm supposed to give in a couple of hours and tell him I will not be able to make it to the shiur because Hatzalah said you have to go to the hospital. So they put me on the phone with Rabbi Bald, who's the person in charge of Irgun Shiuri HaTorah. And I said, I'm sorry, but I was in a terrible car accident. I won't be able to give the shiur tonight. And Rabbi Bald says to me, I don't understand. It says, Shliach mitzvah eina nezaken. If you're going to do a mitzvah, nothing's going to happen to you. So Rabbi Deutsch, how could you have had this accident? That's what he blurts out to me. I said, well, you know, Hatzalah just told me 95% of people don't survive the kind of accident I just survived. Maybe because Hashem wanted to show us that there are miracles in our time. The Talmud says, A miracle happens every day to a person. And if not that miracle, you would not be surviving. So when you realize that your whole life is miraculous, when you realize that your whole life is miracles, if you add up how much your expenses are, how much your income is, it doesn't make sense. But somehow Hashem makes it that you survive. When we have true Emunah and Bitachon in Hashem, our stress goes away. Because we know Hashem has a calculation. We have to make our hishtadlus. We have to do our part, and Hashem will do the rest. And that's the way I live my life, and that's the way I encourage everybody to live your life. Whether you're going through difficulties, because life is full of difficulties, but you never give up. Even if you think all is lost, you keep davening to Hashem, and Hashem will help you and will guide you. I always leave a couple of minutes for any questions you may have. Now is your time if you have any questions. Yes?
So, I want to ask the Rabbi whether there are known, if there are evidence for the oral code timeline between the death of Moshe Rabbeinu to the first Galileo.
Okay, so just because this is being broadcast, I'm going to repeat the question and then say it again. Is there evidence of Torah Shebal Peh, the oral code? This question was actually asked to me by a reporter for Haaretz newspaper in Israel, one of the most anti-Orthodox Jewish newspapers. When I opened the Living Torah Museum, a reporter from Haaretz called me up and said, Rabbi, I have a question for you. If you answer me this question, then I will possibly believe that the Torah, the oral Torah, is really true. I said, when are you coming to New York? She said, about 6 weeks. I said, great. When you come to New York, I want to show you something. And I will prove to you that the Jews 2,000 years ago were following the oral Torah. How are you going to do that? I said, when you come, you're going to get to see it. Okay. Well, 6 weeks later, she shows up to New York, and I said, let me teach you something that it's written in the oral Torah. It's written in the oral Torah that what happens if I borrow money from you for 30 days? We'll use an example. So we take out a papyrus document and we write down, I, Shaul, Shimon, Deutsch, borrow $5,000 for 30 days to be paid back on the 31st day. 2 witnesses signed this document that they witnessed that I took the loan, and on the 31st day I come and I pay you back the money. They write paid in full and they sign it. In the Talmud and in the Mishnah, that is called the Shtar Parua, a pay document. Now the Mishnah has a question. Is this pay document muksa on Shabbos or not? Does it have any use? If something has no use, it's considered din muksa. If something still has a use, then it's not muksa. So it says if there is still room in the margins that I can write shtei oisios, at least 2 letters, then there has a use. What happens if it's completely written, there's not even place to write 2 letters on it? The Mishnah gives you a suggestion. What should you do? The Talmud says, and if you want to look it up, it's in Shabbos 78b. Lichrech oisei al tzloiche shel paltin. Wrap up this papyrus document and use it as a bottle stopper for a perfume bottle. Paltin in the Talmud is perfume in Roman Latin. Paltin is perfume. So I tell this whole thing to this reporter, and she says, so what? I said, I'd like to show you the only one in the world ever discovered. This is a perfume bottle with a papyrus stopper in place exactly as the oral Torah teaches you should do. So if you want to have evidence that the Jews 2,000 years ago were following the oral Torah, come to my museum. I'll let you hold it in your hands. The only one in the world with a papyrus document. It was found in a cave in Midbar Yehuda, in the Judean desert.
With the Dead Sea Scrolls or something?
That's separate from the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was found by Yigal Yadin, and he sold it to a collector who sold it to us.
What's the name of the site of this cave? There's a name?
I don't remember it offhand, but it's a small cave site. And so you can, when you visit New York, I'm going to give you the opportunity of holding the only one in the world that's doing exactly what the oral Torah teaches you should do. Any other questions? Well, I want to wish each and every one of you a kasiva v'chasima tova, and you should have a year of learning, and you should grow in your learning, and you should have simchat hachayim, happiness with your life, and you should be zoicha to be as goal tzedek b'mher b'yameinu. And if you want to order the books or you can buy them, either you can call the Living Torah Museum number, 877-PLAN-A-TOR, 877-PLAN-A-TOR, that's 877-752-6286. Those of you who are here in Israel, you can buy it from us directly here. Thank you so much.